Hi everybody, my name is Yuri Popov and I'm the co-founder and CTO of Incineration Productions. We deal mainly in making our own games, specifically for VR, and we have two games out on Steam right now, SpellPunk and A Very Bad Christmas Eve.
So Yuri, for people who aren't familiar, talk a little about your game SpellPunk VR. What's this game all about?
Well, SpellPunk is a game, it's a multiplayer game, first off. Currently, it's a 1v1 battle arena. So what makes Spellpunk different is that you draw the magical signs in the air with your own hands in order to cast the spells. So it's not a simple mechanic where you like big spells from a menu or something like that. You have to physically draw out the magical symbol in order to be able to cast the spell. And when the idea came to me, I thought like that's perfect for VR. Because there was this really old RPG game, I don't know if you know it, it's called Arx Fatalis.
Never heard of it.
Well, it's really old open world RPG. I think it was made by the same people who made Gothic, and it had a system where you draw runes with your mouse on the screen in order to cast the spells. And it was really janky at the time, but it sort of like made an impression on my young self. So I got inspired with that, and I was like, VR is probably the best tech for this kind of game, so we set out to make it.
You know, it reminds me a lot of that original when Oculus was like the new hot stuff. You know, when it came out and was relatively new. Insomniac did a game called The Unspoken, but it was a Mage game where you did that, where you drew stuff too. But it kind of didn't really go anywhere. I think after the funding drop for Oculus, they just kind of abandoned it and just moved on to other things because it never felt like it was fully realized. It had a lot of cool ideas. It was Insomniac, Triple A, so it had a lot of big visuals, but also like you didn't have free-form movement. You could teleport, but in your game you can like lean through cover and move and stuff like that.
Yes.
Where I believe in their game you were stagnant on a platform and you could move to different platforms, but that was it.
As honestly, I've never played it myself. I think you can teleport from one preset position to another.
Yeah.
In our game, actually, with the latest update, we added a complete set of locomotion. So you have movement and snap turning, and the free range that your play space allows. So basically, it's more like Half-Life Alyx with the locomotion setting, rather than teleporting.
Can you talk about some of the challenges of working in VR, especially when you have to design locomotion for the player?
Yes, well, designing locomotion in VR, the single thing you need to worry about is motion sickness. I think it's still an unsolved problem because some people will get motion sickness no matter what. In my personal research, and I'm not saying anything here, but I think it's connected with actual seasickness as well. If a person is more prone to seasickness, they are more prone to get motion sickness in VR. I have like a 500 person sample group to work with. So it's definitely challenging, and coming up with actually balancing the gameplay in order to cater to the stuff preventing motion sickness, because in a normal first person game like in Doom, the character is running like 90 kilometers an hour. You can't do that in VR because everybody will get motion sick. I mean,
too fast.
I have like probably 1,000 hours in gameplay in VR, and I get sick if you put Doom or Counter-Strike speeds in the locomotion, and you have to be really careful with when you darken the screen, when you shift stuff around. It's another thing of designing the games, because as we as game designers are used to having this set of tools for even guiding the player and focusing gameplay and all that stuff. And in VR it sort of breaks down, because then you have to give like the ultimate camera freedom. Like in VR you cannot take the camera away from the player, right? So even something as simple as a cutscene becomes a challenge at this point. And we've opted to just not do them. Like if stuff is happening, it's just happening in the world, like like it's going to happen in real life or as close to real life as possible.
You guys have fantastic use of color in your game. Can you talk about the visual style of SpellPunk and how you like created that and implemented that into your game? And is it shell shading or is it different?
It is cell shaded. It's I would say it's a bit it's a special blend of cell shading. We actually don't use any PBR techniques, that's physically based rendering, so we don't use them because we really wanted to hit a comic book, a more of a hand drawn style, and in that style you don't have like normal maps and you don't have the smoothness maps and the specular stuff. So if you take a game like Borderlands, for example, where it's still cell shaded and it's toon-like, but they do use the physically based rendering beneath that as well, and we decided to completely opt out of that and just rely on color, on how the light is going to be shaded in a toon way, with sort of like 3 distinct steps, and the actual shape and silhouette of all the objects. Because our goal was to create, at least artistically, a VR game that looks completely different from anything else. Most VR games actually try to go for that photorealism and never really achieve it because of the performance limitations of VR. So we decided to go with a new route and just try to go as stylized as we can. And I would say people actually really like it. I mean, I was afraid that they were going to be taken out of the experience because it doesn't look photoreal, but no, none of our players seem to mind. They say it's colorful and it's pretty to look at, and it makes them feel like they're in a comic book, or some have said a Doctor Strange movie, or a painting, stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
color's great in your game. It's I think the colors are really underused in a lot of games where you could have like more of it. People always go for like draw down, downward tones or whatever. But yours is so bright and vibrant, like you said, like a Doctor Strange movie.
We really put, I would say, a tremendous amount of effort with coming up with the general art direction of the game. Because it's it made look like it's just a bunch, we slapped like a bunch of vibrant colors on top of the geometry, and that's that, but it's actually a lot of work has gone into picking out the colors and making sure they match and making sure they don't like even burn the eyes of whoever has the VR headset on. So coming up with a consistent art style was I would say yet another challenge, especially for a VR title that's stylized, because if we were going for the photoreal approach, that there isn't really an art style. It's like you go as real as possible, but we challenged ourselves to try and make basically a comic book page come to life inside of VR.
And how many different spells can you cast? I'm guessing there are offensive abilities and defensive abilities as well.
As right now we have a single defensive ability that's a shield that can block a spell, and we have 8 offensive spells that all differ in the amount of damage they do and how fast they are, and they have like debuff effects as well. Like if you get hit with a lightning spell, your hands start to shake, so it's harder to draw spells and aim. And we recently, with our latest update, we added destructibles to the environment. So actually the 2 platforms that the players are standing on facing each other are almost fully destructible. Only the center point isn't, because we wanted a firm foundation for you to stand on. But the side sections, if you decide to go there, you should know that they are fully destructible and you can plummet to your doom if your opponent decides to hit them with enough firepower. And the destructible covers that you can use to hide from your opponent's spells while you try to figure out what to do. They're also destructible and they won't last forever. So
how do advances in technology, whether it's NVIDIA releasing the RTX or Valve releasing their Index, like does that help or like hinder you during their development of your early access game?
I would say both in some strange way, because a new headset coming out is great, because more people are going to have access to VR in one way or another, and we want as many players as possible. And the advancements of tech are really great because they present new opportunities for gameplay, because VR gameplay is so tied to the hardware. Because like if you can't do much with the controller, there's not much gameplay wise you can do. Like if you think of the Vive controllers, the sticks, they don't have that many buttons. So if you're making a game just for them, you sort of need to get creative with how you handle input from your player. So that's why in the early days you got a lot of games where players were doing this and all sort of primitive gestures, because there just isn't enough buttons on the controller, right? But nowadays stuff advanced, and you basically have normal gamepads divided between the two hands. So that was great for us. On the other hand, as an indie studio, having yet another device come out that people want you to support is a technical and a time challenge. But I think we've managed to sort of catch up with the trends now, and we support most of the PC VR headsets on the market, and we're going to be porting for the Quest series sometimes this year.
Yeah, that was my next question. It was like, does your game run on Quest? And it sounds like it can run on Quest, because that there even the shell shading, I guess, is it hard? It's easier for things to do because it's not as photorealistic, so you don't have to render as much on the screen. Or is like, what are some of the challenges when moving it from the Oculus to the Quest and getting it to run on that platform, since it is mobile?
Yeah, the major technical challenge, I would say, is just the amount of geometry. It's the Quest can handle a lot less geometry than a normal PC. So the shading part of it, our shader is I would say complex enough to also present a performance challenge for the Quest, but it does, the shader does run on the Quest. We've tested that out, but it's the amount of geometry and detail you can put out on the screen, which is solely limited by the fact that it is a mobile device. So I'm not sure if I can mention the exact technical specs that you get from the developer portal, but it's way smaller than what you would normally put in a scene, like 30% less, I would say. So optimizing the scenes in a way where the device can comfortably run them at 72 FPS or 80 FPS is the technical challenge when it comes to the Quest. It's basically doing the same with less. If you had I don't know, 20,000 verts for a rock asset, you need to get down to like 1,000 in order to get the same amount of rocks, or just cut 50 rocks out of the scene and have one rock in the center and have that be of importance. So it's just less.
Just less, some more optimization, right? That's the key.
Yeah, it's a lot of work to get a game to look the same and still run on the Quest. But we have a pretty good chance of doing that because we went the stylized route. Like an example I like to give in different tech talks and stuff is Job Simulator. Job Simulator is also heavily stylized and doesn't rely on the PBR stuff. So its Quest port looks almost identical as its normal game.
What's the biggest challenge of just making a game in VR and getting it out there? Because I don't think to this day Oculus has even told people their units sold or their install base. Like, how, from your perspective, since you are a dev, do you see more people in VR than you did a few years ago? Is it growing slowly? Is it stagnant? Is it shrinking?
It's definitely growing. It's certainly a growing market. Like even if you take international regions like India and China, they've seen mass adoption of mobile VR headsets because they're easy to set up and easy to use and don't require you to have like an already existing gaming PC. So those markets are definitely growing, and I would say that the PC VR market in the West and in like the developed countries has definitely matured, and like more and more people are adopting it. Like it's way past the so-called early adopter phase. Like last year one of my friends got an Index as a Christmas gift from his girlfriend. And his girlfriend isn't a gamer at all, so she had heard about it, she had found a way to buy it and thought it was a good gift, and so on. So it's definitely coming into the mainstream. I mean, an Index for Christmas is a great gift anyhow, but so yeah, it's becoming more and more mainstream, and I think we're going to see more and more AAA games focus on VR as well, after Valve, sort of made a path and showed everybody that it's doable. And we're going to see a lot of advancement in the coming years. I mean, it might be 5 years, it might be 10 years, but VR is a very young tech. If you think about it, I mean, 10 years ago we weren't even talking about VR, right?
Mhm.
So I'm definitely thinking that the next 10 years of VR are going to be super exciting, and we're going to see new tech that bridges the gap even further. We're going to get metaverses. It's basically we're going towards Ready Player One at full speeds.
Just because I'm curious with the Quest, I think other than it being a mobile, so you have to use constraints to your game, but people have complained about the tracking because it uses the hands. Was that a problem for you when you were porting the game to the platform? Dealing with issues with the tracking itself, or the lack thereof, I should say.
I wouldn't say, like, both the Quest and the Quest 2 have good frontal tracking.
Right.
Like, as long as you keep your hands in front of you, it's pretty stable and it knows where they are. Like, the problem comes when people try to do this, like reach behind their head, and then the headset loses the controller because it uses front-facing cameras to actually detect where it is. So it's not like the Vive or the Index where you have base stations, in your room that can track the controller anywhere. So you have to think about that if you're designing the game for the Quest. Like, if you make the player reach back to take a sword out, that's not really ideal. So you need to change it. Luckily for us, porting our game, most of the important stuff happens in front of the player because you're drawing symbols with your hands. So we didn't run into those issues, and we didn't have to change our gameplay to fit the technical specifications. What we're really excited about actually is the hand tracking that the Quest offers, because then we can actually have people do interesting stuff with their fingers in order to further the magic, which is actually one of my inspirations for SpellPunk, which was the show The Magicians. I don't know if you know it.
Yes, I love that show.
Yeah, they do magic with their fingers,
they do these little
right?
symbols with their hands and then do that.
Yeah. So I was like, man, it's going to be really cool to have a game like that where you have a magic system like that. And so far, the closest we've come to is your whole hand moving. But with the introduction of AI assisted finger tracking, I'm certain that at one point in the future we're going to update SpellPunk to have like the magician's finger magic. It's going to be really cool.
It's funny because I've seen that technology before at CES many years ago when it was still the Wild West of VR. It technically still is, I guess. But I think it was just too early, too expensive, and developers were already dumping so much money trying to just make a VR game to try to develop a custom, 5-finger controller. It was just too much money and dev time. So I think it failed. But they had a Kickstarter, and it was a cool idea. And it's just with technology, just because you're first doesn't necessarily always mean you'll be the one implemented.
No,
so
definitely not. It's more likely that you'll fail.
Your game, I think, would cater itself really well to the PSVR user base. Any thoughts on trying to get it on that platform? I know it's much more difficult these days.
Well, we are already a Sony development partner, so we are working on getting SpellPunk on the PlayStation as well. Honestly, the pandemic has completely hindered that, because we've been trying to get hardware from Sony, and it just can't. They cannot give it to us right now. But we are already a certified partner, and we are working in that regard. So I'm fairly confident that pretty soon we'll be able to make an announcement and have and have it on the PSVR as well
That's great.
for those people.
Are you guys fully remote from the pandemic, or were you guys already remote before pre-pandemic?
No, we weren't remote before the pandemic because we strongly believe that creating games is a collaborative, creative effort, and it's much easier if I can go over and tap my art director on the shoulder and just have a chat with him. So when the pandemic hit, we tried working remotely as much as we could, and that wasn't easy at all. Like it completely changed our whole work dynamic and how we do stuff. So as soon as it was okay for us to come back in the office, like the core part of the team came back to the office. And, we were extra careful with masks and hand sanitizers everywhere, but we just found it way more easier to work together than remote. I know most people during the pandemic have found out that working from home is great and it suits them better, but I think for us at least, we found out that making games is harder when you're alone at home and you don't have your creative buddies with you.
Where can people find more information about your game, and where can they go to buy it?
Yeah, well, you guys can find SpellPunk in Steam and Viveport, which are the two major distribution centers for PC VR games. It should also be available in basically every VR arcade in the US and worldwide. We are working with, I think, two of the biggest arcade distributors out there. So if you don't have a headset yourself and you feel like you want to try something different, maybe get into VR, you can try visiting your local arcade, and SpellPunk should be there.
It's on sale right now on Steam too.
It is.
It's $2.74. So if you guys are looking for a VR game,
yeah, we went big for the summer sales at 75% off. So you can get it now and keep it forever, and we'll keep updating it and adding more cool stuff in the future, like more multiplayer modes and more single player content. We're planning on adding a story mode as well, so there's definitely more updates coming.